We're also streaming.
Is the mayor there? So we should be looking for pictures on our computers so we can use as our background.
Yes. Oh, with my street background? Oh, okay. Oh, maybe I'll go back to me.
So are you suggesting that we not use it, Julian? To not?
Okay. We'll look at the boring ceiling tile in my cubby.
Let's see.
I think he's in the conference room.
All my pictures have people in them. I want a nice shot, though I'm not going to use it, Julie.
Sheila, you want the bookcases, remember?
Yeah, well, I get that in my own office, but I'd have to clean the bookcase off.
You want the library behind you.
I have so many books on my bookshelf that it's an embarrassment. I refuse to throw any of them away. It's just not.
Hello, everyone.
Okay, we are live now on the stream.
Everybody ready?
Yes.
Oh, jeez.
Just gonna give a little of this. The Virtual City Council work session on Thursday, April 16th, 2020 will be called to order at a little bit past 3 o'clock. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag
The United
of the United States of America
States
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
one more time with spirit.
Nice. Let me see. Mr. City Attorney, please present the first item.
Yes, sir. Presentations, comprehensive plan update. Presenter, Planning and Zoning Director, Dr. Nash.
Oh, shouldn't we have attendance? No, not attendance.
Not for work session.
I don't think we have to. It's not on my script. Takia,
Not for work session, no.
you don't have to at work sessions? Okay.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Let me go mute.
I'm sure Fred's trying to get in somewhere.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Julian, could you start the presentation? Thank you. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so this is going to be a fairly quick update because my last update was February 20th at the work session you had. But I did want to let you know what we've been doing. And when I'm finished with the presentation on the comp plan, I wanted to let you know what I'm doing with adequate public facilities. So I heard you talking about that on Monday night. So I'm going to go through where we are, which is a little bit behind where we had planned to be, but how we're changing the process and the timeline. So next slide. I still got a pretty good amount accomplished between February 20th and until March 11th. I had several meetings, very good meetings with our boards and commissions, Arts and Public Places, Environmental Commission, also hosted a summit to get input on the comprehensive plan, which was great. All of this was building to April 30th, where I was hoping to have a big public meeting to share the input I'd received from the boards and commissions and community associations to date. But then, next slide, Julian. My little montage of the apocalypse. All right, next slide. So fortunately, one of the main themes of the comp plan is resiliency. And if you can see, the bottom of that picture says, when you bend with the wind, but don't break in the storm. So this is what we are practicing today. And it seems very timely that that's a main theme of our comp plan. So next slide, Julian. So in addition to building on some of the work we were able to do before the shutdown, we are still able to do some ongoing work on the comp plan. So can you scroll a tiny bit up, Julian? So we're still working on community surveys. I've just closed our first one that we had open for about 6 months, and the results are on our website. We're gearing up for another one. We've also, some of the community associations are very creative and have been managed to meet via Zoom. So we're still getting input from some of them. And the Nitty Gritty Committee is still emailing fairly regularly, and I'm trying to stay in touch with them. Next slide. So the survey that we're going to be having out soon, so keep an eye out for it, is a visual preference survey where we show you different types of buildings and you say which one you like. I've already gone through a lot of the images and weeded a lot of things out. So you won't have, like a Walmart and then a beautiful Annapolis downtown building. It'll be a lot more realistic of choices. They'll also be tied to certain places. So it'll be like, at this intersection in the city, what kind of building would you like to see here? So it's more specific and more realistic than what we've done before. We're also working on a 20-year fiscal analysis that is almost finished. Of course, she finished it almost right before COVID. So now she's working on some revisions. Fortunately, since it's so long-term, it's not as sensitive to events like COVID, but that will have impact on the analysis. So another thing we're doing is we're taking the goals and strategies that we've received from our community associations and boards and commissions and developing those, adding performance measures and performance targets to them, which require more understanding of existing conditions and some analysis that we can do without needing a lot of public input, because it's more just sort of background research and work. Next slide.
Sally,
Yes.
does that mean you're predicting that COVID isn't going to last for 20 years?
Yes.
Good.
So next steps, obviously I have to reschedule April 30th. I am going ahead and scheduling some of these roundtable events, I'm calling them, which are sort of educational presentations. I have one on May 27th. They will be, Becky Guile come join us, share what she's been doing. And then also in mid-May, actually, I'm trying to schedule one with Shelley Rowe from Eastport to talk about transportation. And she was willing and able to do that. So we're still making sure everyone can use Zoom and that will be a platform that works. So basically, we're just taking it a day at a time. So that's it for comp plan. Are there any questions about that?
Sally, I have a question. This is Rhonda. Have you gotten any feedback lately from the Greater Parole Community Association?
Not lately, no.
Okay. Or any of the other Fairfax Road or Heritage Pool Community Association?
Fairfax Road Community.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
Not from GPCA.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I've heard from Fairfax, but not Greater Parole.
Okay. I'll check with them.
Okay, that would be great.
Okay.
I was supposed to give them a presentation
Right.
with Admiral Heights in Germantown, and yeah, that got canceled. So.
Exactly.
Any other questions?
Sally, the
Yes,
same
Ellie?
thing with Ward 1 Residents Association. Was that the day that we had I think we had it scheduled, but then this happened, right? We never met.
I met with them, but they were going to have additional meetings, which actually Mark has soldiered on and has had one meeting on Zoom, and he's planning another one. And he just contacted me to see if the deadline had changed from April 30th. I said, yes, you have,
okay.
Let's say another month. I don't know when I'll be able to have a big event, or I'll have to figure out a way to do it on Zoom.
Okay. Well, that's good that they're meeting. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else? Okay, so I did want to brief you on adequate public facilities, since the Board of Appeals
Sally, you're breaking up. You're actually
are
very
of
melodious.
the certificates.
Sally,
I'm sorry?
you're breaking up. I think maybe we need to get everybody to turn their mute on, but you're breaking up because I couldn't hear any of what you just said.
Sometimes the Wi-Fi on this side of my office works better. Okay. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. So I was just saying, Ross, that the Board of Appeals remanded 5 of the adequate public facilities certificates to us. So we have I've worked with the department directors of all the departments to completely revise how we do our adequate public facilities review. Every department, regardless of whether theirs was one of the ones that got remanded, has made a new template for their review. I've also updated the web page, which some places what a review, people use these forms. Oh, sorry. Yes, Ross?
Sally, your connection's still pretty bad. You're breaking up.
Huh. Okay. See, this was just practice for my finance committee presentation.
Maybe you should do it from another room.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm closer to the router.
You do it. Go to the market house.
No one's there.
I don't know where it's better, but okay, let's try this.
Bathroom.
It's not better?
So far.
Good for now.
Okay. All right. I'm just in the middle of the office. There's Kevin. Okay. So I've updated the webpage for some of that information was, more than 10 years old. That was on the webpage. It was on there for so long, we forgot that it was actually on the webpage, that they had a webpage for it. And so now every department's using this. It clearly lays out what standards they use to review the criteria, both the standards that are in the code and additional applied standards, which we've published online. So I feel pretty good about the process now, and we should have something for Eastport Lofts soon. I'm just waiting for police for their certificate, and then we'll work with the applicants to go through all of the facilities and address whatever was not adequate. So that's kind of more the short term. Then for the long term, we've contacted all the department directors to ask them what kind of changes they would want in their in Title 22.
Sally?
Yes.
Sally, Alderman Gay had a question. Yeah.
Oh, I can't see them. Oh, okay.
Would that be an opportunity to also go back and update like recreational pieces of that as well?
Yes, all departments, including Rec and Parks. I know that Archie really wants to raise the fees for the fee in lieu, which are really low. So we should definitely do that. And I know Fire wants to change the way you're exempted just because you have sprinklers. So you're completely exempt from Fire APF. So
and if the fee in lieu is not, if the fee in lieu is not changed, is there a way though that with the the new pitch that they be required to use the recreational spaces we talked about previously, maybe with parks or something around in the Eastport area?
What was the first part of your question?
So if they don't, if they don't opt for the fee in lieu, and they want to go for the recreational to add to the city, would they be like a park in the Eastport area or?
Yes, it would have to be something that could provide services within the area of the development. So if the development were in Eastport and they didn't want to pay the fee in lieu, they could create a new park somewhere or provide new equipment or something like that. We could work it out through the mitigation requirements. Right now, everyone's going to want to pay the fee in lieu because it's so low.
Duan, I'd like to work with you on that. I agree. It's kind of $3,800 is nothing. And I think we really mean that we want recreational facilities. So I think, Sally, when all of this is done, certainly hope you're sending it by the council so we can look at it and offer input on it.
Right. So after we get input from the staff, we're going to get input. We're going to come back to you for changes to 22 and talk to Planning Commission and, then just general public is to the extent we can get, we'll be able to get public input on that. This is probably still going to be a year-long process. So hopefully by then we'll be able to have more public meetings and things like that.
Thank you.
Yep, Ellie?
Hi, yeah. What did you say you were putting on the website? Because I was a little confused at that appeals meeting that Ross and I were at, where Alan Hyatt kept referring to what the guidelines were on the website, trying to use those to supersede, try using them in his argument. And it just made me think of what has legal precedent. Do we get ourselves in trouble when we have stuff on the website that may contradict the code? Do you know what I mean?
Right. Well, the Board of Appeals in January, one of the things they put in their opinion was that the standards had not been published as we were directed to do in 22. However, we then subsequently realized that everything had been published online. It just hadn't been updated in about 10 years. So that's part of what I did is update everything. But I also, with Joel Brathwaite's help, went through everything on the web and made sure it was consistent with what was in the code. Then we did add additional standards where appropriate to help further explain how the person who is reviewing the project actually evaluates the facility, because it's not always clear in what is in 22 what they look at. And it can change too, because you might refer to the most recent manual from your profession that gets updated every year. So that's gonna change, from time to time.
Okay. Well, that was great assistance from the law office.
It was. He did a lot of work.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
So I agree. We need to go back and look at Title 22 in its entirety. I've been struggling to get the APF for traffic on with the changes that Teresa Sutherland made before she left, but which does make it consistent in form with the other APF. But I think we really need to do a major rethink of all of the APF, what we're trying to accomplish. Some things I'm not sure are even possible to accomplish that we're asking for, and definitely are ambiguous. Some things are sort of sidelines that are not really in the code. So I think there's a lot of work to be done there. Kind of gotten sidetracked with the virus and other things that are more pressing, but I like the sound of this is going to take a while to get all straightened out.
Yeah, as I like to say, there's a lot of room for improvement in Title 22 and 21.
Being the perpetrator of almost every piece of Title 22, I'll say guilty.
Of 22?
Yes, I think I was co-sponsor on all three pieces of legislation that put that in place. The first one with Dave Cordell, the next one with Dick Israel, and the last one might have been with Ian. So mea culpa.
It's always in how you apply it. You always learn new things about what you should have put in the code, when you're actually doing the review and the process, going through the process. Okay, so that's it for me, unless there are any other questions.
Anybody else?
Nope, none from me.
All right, I'll have to find a good spot by Tuesday.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item.
Yes, the next item is the 0520 City Council Meetings Order of Business for the purpose of modifying the order of business for regular and special meetings of the City Council, sponsored by Alderman Savage.
Let me hand it over to Alderman Savage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
DJ Savage, I mean.
That's right. DJ Cool. So what spurred this legislation was, some of those late meetings we've had in the past, especially the ones that come to mind about the budget that have gone on incredibly late, but not even those meetings, some of our other regular ones where it gets to be, say, 10, 11 at night after all the public hearings and ceremonial materials. It gets to be that late, 10 or 11, until we actually deliberate and discuss legislation. And I don't know about all of you, but I'm typically in bed by then, and I'm not thinking, I'm not in my best thinking state at that time of night. And so I was trying to figure out ways we could essentially have our first meeting be dedicated to a lot of the ceremonial items, the petitions, the awards that we give out, the citations, and even the public hearings for the legislation. And then at the second meeting of the month, which I think is the special meeting, Julian, if you could scroll down a little bit. The second meeting of the month, I guess to page 2. Keep going. There we go. A little more. There we go. So, yeah, the first meeting, the regular meeting of the month, and then the second one is the special meeting. And At the second meeting, I'm proposing to deal with more of just our business, right? That would be the second and third reader votes, where we actually discuss amendments and what we want to do with the legislation in question. Just so we try to get to that business earlier on in the evening. This is just an idea. I certainly wanted to talk about this more with the council and the Rules of Government Committee if it gets to that point. But these are just some of my ideas coming out, because I know after the public hearing we had about reducing the public speaking times we did have some people make the suggestion that we look at other ways to improve the efficiency of meetings. And I think Alderman Arnett had said that, I think this is what you said, that previously it was your understanding that this is how the meetings used to operate. So there, and I think also we could see, my last point is just this past Monday at our virtual meeting, we ended up getting things done pretty quickly. And I know that was largely because we didn't have any of the ceremonial items or the public testimony. And I think that just kind of shows that we can set up our meetings in a way that allow for, I think, better conversations about the legislation in question. Thank you.
So I'm not sure who had their hand up first, Ross or Alderwoman Pindell Charles, but you should go first, Alderwoman Pindell Charles.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had a question that I had submitted, and I've gotten a little behind on my emails, but I was wondering if what the legislation indicated was that the ceremonial items, the citations, the recognitions, is that at the bottom of the agenda, or is it still going to be at the top of the agenda?
So that would still be at the top.
Okay.
Julian, if you could put that back up again, the legislation underneath the regular monthly meetings. There we go. Scroll up a little bit to A, line 7. There you go. The regular monthly meetings of the council, and then you'll see number 1 is roll call, 2 is approval of the agenda, and I'm sorry, I'm looking at the ceremonial stuff would be at the second meeting. So Julian, scroll down a little bit so we can see all of B. So these are for the special meetings, and you'll see roll call, approval of the agenda, and then petitions, reports, and communications, and consent calendar, and then public hearings. So the petitions, reports, and communications would be all the citations.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I figured that, but I just wanted to get clarification. Thank you, Alderman Savage.
You're welcome.
Mm-hmm.
So my recollection, and this was actually before any of us were on the council, but while Ellen was mayor, the first meeting of the month was the business meeting where legislation was taken up. And the second meeting, the special meeting, was the one where the ceremonial and all of the public hearing, general public hearing things happened. And what happened is so much legislation started being drafted and introduced that Ellen started putting it on both agendas. I had a problem with the second agenda, the special meeting, and I went to Ellen and said, can we do this? And she said, no, if you look at the code, and I think it's still that way in the code, only the mayor has purview over the special meeting. And that was done not to make the mayor president of the country or king of the country. It was done because there needed to be some priority about how many things got on that agenda, because even back then that agenda got so full. And so this was early on attention that I had raised. I do want to be co-sponsor on this legislation. I think this returns us to the intent of the council, which is that whichever meeting, I think it's the regular meeting, is primarily the legislative agenda, which does have public hearings specific to pieces of legislation that are on the agenda, but doesn't have the general input from the public, doesn't have all the ceremonial, doesn't have all the other kinds of things that were going on. And I think it will make our meetings more manageable as Alderman Savage suggests. So I support this. It is also one of those things that we can do, and if we find out we can't live with it, we can undo. But I think having meetings that go on till 3 a.m, things like that, which we probably still will have some, even with this, but that's not good for anybody. And it's certainly constituents say, you know, I had to leave at 10 o'clock because I've got to go to work. So I didn't get an opportunity to give testimony or be heard or whatever their issue is. And I think they're right. When we go beyond, certainly beyond 11, but even 10, a lot of people with children just have to leave, and you can see it. And in fact, Mayor, when you call the next person up and they say they had to leave, that's really a disservice to them.
Oh, go ahead, Ellie.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Rob, for putting this together. And I hate to bring up a sore subject, but when I was recused from short-term rentals, I was at home watching the council meeting when you were voting on Facebook Live, and the dynamics were just awful because it went into the night, and the Facebook, people were dropping off like flies, and you all looked exhausted, and there you were voting on something that I know Rob had worked really. You all had worked really hard on, and by the time it came to vote, it looked like you were just all wiped out. And that was, from a public view. So yes, this is good. But I have a question. The public, where do you have public hearings? Yeah, public hearings. So that's public hearing on the respective legislation, and that's not the same night, because now we're used to having, I don't know. So do we ever have a public hearing and vote at the same night?
Yes.
No,
not often, but.
Not often.
But we have to vote to do that.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so that was the only thing I was worried about, because that obviously couldn't happen because we have it split between the meetings. So.
But Ellie's
I'm
point,
just gonna take control of it here. There's about 5 hands up. So Ross, if you have something specific to that, please say.
yes, to Ellie's point, it almost, and Fred made the same point. We have a public hearing and then we go ahead and vote. And I think that tells the public how much we're taking their public opinion into account. The way the county does it, they have the public hearing and then they vote on it the next time. Now, I'm not saying we're the county, and certainly have resisted trying to make us like the county, but it does seem if you're going to have public hearing, you ought to have time for council members to go back, even committees to re-meet and take that public hearing into account. Give it the diligence that it deserves. If the public makes the effort to come out, we ought to listen to them.
Alderman Pound had his hand up next, then Alderman Gay, and then Alderman Finlayson. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the things that we've only mentioned in this discussion, but I think is really important, is that the fact of the matter is a lot of people on the council I don't think are always thinking straight at midnight or 12:30. I can't tell you how many times, and I've been king of this, somebody's had to raise their hand and say, Mr. Mayor, wait a minute, what is it we're voting on? That's kind of what happens when you go late. And we've had budget matters. We've had some really important issues that we voted on at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and it's crazy. I think we certainly want to take the public into account, very much so. We do want to listen to what they have to say, but the fact of the matter is, it's for our benefit also that we not go any later into the night than we really have to, because no matter how much we try, when we get tired, bad things happen. And I think that in and of itself is enough to make me want to support some changes in the way we do things. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Gay?
Thanks. Yeah, I agree that changes definitely need to be made, but I think the only changes that need to be made are possibly that we meet more frequently. because I find it incredibly, upsetting how slow legislation moves, especially when it's something that we're all individually passionate about, whatever the individual piece of legislation may be. It goes to a committee, the committee might not meet that week, and then July goes by, next thing you know is September, and you still don't have a firm piece of legislation. That's upsetting, and it's upsetting to the residents as well, to the public, when they elect a job and they expect us to produce results, and we serve 4 years, and it's like a blink of an eye goes by and nothing's. I think that we should be at least adding a work session so that we can discuss more legislation and have the opportunity to conversate more with each other on some of the issues so we can start producing. I think that's the key. I agree, though, that sometimes the meetings do go a little too late, maybe adjusting, the state of the city that we have at the beginning of meetings and all of that stuff. But yeah,
smack.
I do just agree that we should maybe just adding one more where we have an opportunity to discuss legislation and start pushing stuff through.
Okay, thank you. Alderwoman Finlayson.
Yes, thank you. I agree that our meetings oftentimes go too long, even though it is rare that we've had, 1 o'clock, 3 o'clock meetings. And they've always been hot button issues. So how do we address, and I think these questions need to be answered, how do we address these subjects that draw a lot of public comment? Because that's what drags our meetings out oftentimes. It's during public hearings that may go on for 2 or 3 hours before we get to the business. And I think changing the meeting order, as Rob is proposing, might address some of that, but it's not going to change the time. So are we prepared to say, the public hearing has to stop at 11 o'clock, whether everyone has had an opportunity to speak or not, and we will continue it at the next meeting, which could take us beyond that time, even a second or third time. There's something to be said for people speaking, and I think the county does this. They allow people to speak one time on an issue. They can't come back and speak every time the issue is before, every committee. We saw that with the short-term rental legislation. Where is, and this is another question for Rob, really, where are the reports from the committees? Are they clumped in with the community recognitions that we're doing? Is that under petitions? And it's not up and I don't have it in front of me. Petitions, what's the other, there were 2 other titles. So
Petitions. It's under petitions, reports, and communications. And that would be, I'm proposing to put that under the second meeting of the month, the special meeting. So that would be all the committee reports and the mayor report.
So do the committees fall into that category, into that timeline?
Yes.
Because all committees are going to be held prior to that second meeting.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that's what you were asking.
Just something to think about as we're moving
Okay.
forward. It's going to bear some research.
So you're asking when will the committee meetings themselves be scheduled? If the schedule will change, if this passes, or if we change these. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, because the committee reporting out, for the most part, has some significance. So if it doesn't fall within the right timing, then you're waiting another month before you hear a committee report. You understand what I'm saying? So if the committee report falls after the meeting, and Takia's raising her hand, so she must have the answer to my.
Yes, by the second city council meeting, all the committees would have met. It's the first one where a lot of the reports that I give you will just say the next meeting is on such and such date. So by the second city council meeting, everyone would have a full report.
Okay. Okay, so thank you.
You're welcome.
And lastly, I keep forgetting what it is. We have public hearings, then the legislation goes, they won't stand up today. Then the legislation goes to committees, correct? Yes, that's the format we've been following. So I'm a little confused when I hear that we have public hearing, we vote the same night. That is a rarity when something is time sensitive. That's not a norm. Takia, am I wrong? I mean, our order is public hearing, then it goes to committees, then it comes back for second and third reader.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Alderman Pendell Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to be added as a co-sponsor, Alderman Savage. And Ms. Takia.
Alderman Arnett.
Find the mute button. So this is what I was referring to in the title. It's 16030. The agenda shall include the following criteria at the regularly scheduled meetings of the city council. The mayor designee, with the consent of the city council, may arrange. And then B says the order of business at all special meetings of the city council shall be established by the mayor only, not in consent with the council. And that's how it is in the code, and that is how it was ever since I've lived in Annapolis. And it was really only Ellen's tenure where I think we started writing more legislation, for better or for worse, that the mix between the regular meeting and the special meeting started to occur. And I think the thrust of Alderman Savage's legislation is maybe we need to pull those back. I do like the point that Takia made to help Sheila, that we really do try to have all the committee meetings done before the second meeting of the month. And that does make sense, that is when the committees report and do those sorts of things. I'm not sure how that puts those committee reports in juxtaposition with the actual vote on second reader. So we'll have to sort that out. Thank you.
Alderman Savage.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, just a further comment on the voting on the same night. Sometimes we do that for resolutions, vote on the same night as the hearing. But otherwise, I just want to point out in the legislation, the law office did include, if you look at the last sentence, that the council and the mayor can change the order of the meetings by a vote, so by majority vote. So we can always change this if we do have something like to Alderman Gay. If there's something we absolutely need to take up, if there is time sensitivity, we can certainly schedule that. But I think generally most of the hang-ups for time often comes through our committee process, which I think while it does end up drawing things out, I do think it's incredibly helpful to us in terms of just separating our, we're limited on time. I think it's good to have the committees do a lot of the work on the legislation itself. But I do also have a question for the law office. In your legal notes that were provided,
Yes.
the last sentence you say, however, once this passes, there will be less discretion in the setting of the special meetings agenda, but only to the extent that the proposed items must always be listed. What were you referring to in terms of the proposed items?
Yes. Basically, we're talking really about two different things in the code. Unfortunately, the charter and the code are kind of confusing. First, 2.16.030 talks about the order of business, but goes on to list what shall be certain categories. What this means is that the categories and the order of those categories is important in that code section. And so what I was talking about was that the council has discretion, however, to, without changing the order, without doing anything to the code, can add categories. However, the order of those categories should be as it's listed. Additionally, in 216.030B, again, the mayor has discretion in all special meetings to deal with the order. And so that's why I said, basically the categories can be changed, although the order is set by the mayor without changing the code at this point. So basically I was saying that in my last section, a lot of what you may be trying to do doesn't require a code revision, but we should consider what the words are saying in the sections. It's kind of confusing as well. The charter, Article 4, Section 4B, also has to be changed if we change this particular code section. It says the mayor may convene special meetings of the city council at such time as he believes that the interests of the city so require. So special meetings are really not supposed to be held absent the mayor convening them. However, all of that said, what we're talking about today is the order and the categories. They're two different things, but in the code, it addresses them as one thing. And we just want to get clarity from you all about the order and the categories and whether there is discretion, whether you want to leave yourself some discretion to add categories without changing the order. A lot of what you want to do is already in the code. What you may want to consider is whether or not you want to actually use the discretion you have, right? 1, special meetings can be held at any time. 2, you can decide the category. Even if you decide the order, doesn't mean that all things in the categories must be considered on any particular meeting. So you have, as a council, the discretion to take things out while leaving the order, but the categories be fungible. You can end the meeting at 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. You don't have to hear everything in one night or in 1 week. You can table things until a special meeting, given the mayor's discretion in that regard. So what I'm trying to say in my legal note is that a lot of what you want is already there. A lot of the discretion is already there. And what you're probably pointing to is an inability to kind of adopt within yourselves whether or not you'll take the discretion that you already have. And so to put things in the code and even changing the charter, you're saying to yourself, we don't have the ability to use the discretion that we do have. So we want to be told how to do it. And when we do that, we want to be very careful that we are adjusting the code so that you don't have to think about it. And I want to make sure that the language takes away your discretion, because right now it gives you discretion to do what you want to do. You just have to do it. But if you want to not have discretion and you want it to be mandatory, there would be some changes that would be required. Order, then category, then a charter change, taking discretion away from the mayor and the council as it regards order of the categories and then the categories themselves.
Yeah, I mean, just for Gavin, could I jump in? I mean, just quick. I mean, I thank you for that, and at least for speaking to my intention is, I think I like the language that you put in there that you used to keep the discretion. I'm not looking to take anyone's power away or to give the council power in this regard. It's just I think the discretion is important. I think what I'm looking for is basically as you say, I think we do have discretion under the current code, but it's not necessarily being utilized. We've fallen into this default standard operating procedure for how we're setting up our meetings. And I think what I'm trying to do is create a new default, a new standard using the code while at the same time not holding us to a certain structure necessarily if we need to change it.
Right. And I think we can do that. There may be some adjustment even to my legal note as we're talking it out today. Because as I look at the 216030, the order of business and the categories are different in the code. And I think, the wording that I would use may be adjusted a little bit to order and categories as opposed to just order, because the order is different from the categories, and the code doesn't make that clear. So I'd probably adjust that as well so that it's clear that the order is one thing and the categories are a different thing.
Okay. And then I guess we could get into some of those details at the committee level, rules of government, assuming the chair agrees. Thank you.
And we can also, go ahead and clean up some of these things now if you want. If the reports need to go away and only come back every second meeting, I think I can use my discretion or whatever to just shave a little bit of time there. And if you want to try a few things first using the discretionary approach, we could do that. If we need to mandate it, we can go that way to it. I get a sense that most people agree with this. Just nod your head.
Do you also agree that special meetings shall not now be discretionary by the mayor, or you want them mandatory?
I think that's been a good tool for us to use in the situations where we've used it. So I'd like to still do that, because sometimes if we have to reach out to 9 people in a kind of an emergency situation, it's a lot easier for me to just call it immediately. But let me get your opinion, Alderman Arnett.
Yes, I think we need at least the 2 meetings. I actually like the fact that we're discussing legislation in this meeting, but I understand, Juan, your impatience. I'm older, so I'm used to a slower pace, but I agree with you. It does. I have legislation from the beginning of last year that is still trying to struggle its way through it. And I know you have legislation that's important to you that is moving very slowly. So I can't see us eliminating one of the meetings a month. I think we need to hold to that. And I'm comfortable with the mayor setting the agenda for whichever the meeting is that is primarily devoted to public hearings and ceremonial things, because somebody has to be the traffic cop. And the mayor isn't doing anything else. Why not have the mayor do that? Sorry.
Alderman Finlayson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm good with us giving you an opportunity to fix what's seen as a problem with our meetings. I was looking over the order and noticed that our Journal of Proceedings comes after the consent calendar in the first meeting proposal, which I think maybe Regina can answer this, or Takia. Our Journal of Proceedings are our minutes, our notes from the previous meeting. So we put that off until after the consent calendar. It just seems kind of out of order. And in the next meeting, there is no approval of the Journal of Proceedings. Correct?
Would you want to speak to that, Regina?
Hi. Well, the consent calendar, the minutes are placed on the consent calendar because it takes 1 vote to approve the whole consent calendar. And we need the minutes approved so we can move the legislation to its next step.
I'm talking about the order in which we do those things. I'm not questioning their...
Right. It's on the consent. It wouldn't need to be moved up any earlier in the agenda, if that's what you're asking.
Right now, don't we approve the Journal of Proceedings prior to the consent calendar?
No, it's on the consent calendar. It's the first item.
Okay, it's on the consent calendar.
Yes.
On the proposed legislation, it's a separate item. Is it not?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
On the legislation, under the regular meeting, we have approval of consent calendar and then approval of journal of proceedings.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Right. That item goes on the consent calendar. The code may need to be adjusted to list the items that go on the consent calendar, but it is on there.
So we approve them as two separate items.
No. The consent calendar is one vote, one roll call vote, and it approves everything listed there.
Including the journal of proceedings.
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
In the legislation, the approval of the journal of proceedings is separate from the consent calendar. Am I not reading?
Let's just get some clarification from City Attorney.
Yes, council members, basically what's happened here, and this is the order of business, is the approval of journal proceedings is really more or less a 4A rather than a 5. If you look at the 216030 in the code, because the approval of journal proceedings should normally take place as a part of the approval of the consent calendar, unless you take it out of the consent calendar because something is wrong with the minutes. If not, then it's included in the approval of the consent calendar. In the code, it's listed as a separate section and probably shouldn't be a separate section, should be more or less a 4A versus a 5 in the category of things to be heard.
And under, for the special meeting, there is no item as approval of journal of proceedings. So that means it's within the consent calendar on that meeting.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Annette?
However, in the code, 216060 says the journal shall be read only at the regular meeting, and unless the reading of the journal procedure is requested by a member of the city council, such journal may be approved without reading. So the city attorney is right. There's a lot of things, a lot of worms, cans of worms this has opened up, and I think we're probably going to have to do a little bit more with this piece of legislation. I hadn't paid attention until the city attorney brought it up about the crosswalk between Article 4 in the charter and Title 2, Section 16. So, Sheila, the point you're raising is relevant. I think it was the journal of procedures were always voted on until we created the consent calendar. And even a little bit after that, it was done, but we decided to put it into the consent calendar. So as Regina said, we could just handle everything with one vote. But 216060 complicates that a little bit.
Okay, thank you, Regina.
I just wanted to say we only adopt minutes at the first meeting of the month. We don't usually adopt them on the second meeting agenda unless we have something like we're going through right now, just to keep the legislation moving. But typically the minutes are only on the first agenda of the month.
And that's consistent with 216060.
Yes.
And that would be the minutes of any of the meetings. So if you had 3 special meetings, all of those minutes would be included as part of the journal of proceedings.
Yes, in the agenda on the following month, yes.
Any more discussion, Alderman Tierney? Need a microphone.
Sorry. Comments by the general public, where were those, Rob? Comments by the general public, the beginning ones.
Yeah, that would be at the special meeting.
With the
I think it would happen. It happens during petitions, reports, and communications, I believe. Regina, correct me if I'm wrong. But that's certainly so. Yeah, that would only happen during one of the meetings.
Yeah. I mean, maybe we should look at what the problem children are. I mean, is it the public testimony, and, you know, do we do a panel type thing? Do we say, you know, what, I mean, we've already limited the time, but maybe we can be more creative in the public testimony. I don't know.
Well, yeah, but I'm just thinking. I think it was Alderman Arnett who said that he liked how we were talking legislation, the details in this work session, and I think we can use these for that purpose, perhaps more so. But also, I think it just makes me think that if we change it, like I'm proposing, this is kind of how we'll be able to jump right into the business, and I think we'll be able to have much more thorough discussions if that's the case. But I'm completely open to tweaking this. I just, I'm kind of just throwing this out there for discussion. So I'm glad everybody is throwing out their ideas.
Thank you. Alderman Rodriguez.
On that, thanks, Rob, for this. And I agree with the legislation, and Tiki, I'd like to be added as a co-sponsor as well. But you're open to suggestions in more creative ways, especially when the public comment. I don't see the part where we limit conversations with every resident testifying. Where's that part?
I think we might need to put that in there.
Engagement.
Only half kidding.
I'll channel Teresa. Don't engage. Don't engage.
And when Ellie said identified the problem children, I think it's largely Ward 1 and Ward 8.
It's yeah, we can name a few people.
No comment there.
Anybody else?
I know this on Facebook, right?
Any more comments on this? So it's got some committee time anyway. Thank you, everybody. Mr. City Attorney, please present the next item on the agenda.
That completes the agenda for today, Mr. Mayor.
So I've got some stuff for good order. Anybody else have some stuff for good order? So I just want to give a big shout out to Julian and Mark. You know, when we came into office a couple of years ago, people were handing around VHS tapes, and he took it from analog to digital, and without his pushing on that and without the upgrades that all this council allowed, we wouldn't be able to do any of this. And we're way ahead, I think, of lots of jurisdictions because just because of the vision of that department. So I want to thank them. And we've mobilized 2 city council meetings already. Our boards and commissions are up. That's impressive work in a short space of time. So let's give him a little round of applause. And I want to thank City Council for working so hard on the budget. I'm going to get a speech in now because you guys are cutting me off at the other council meetings. And then, and there was good news. We've got finally getting some testing in here. Do you all know this? That we're going to set up our first testing station in Parole at the health center. What is good about this testing center is we only have a limited amount of test kits, and we don't yet have the antibody testing capability, which I really believe we need. But it's a start, and also it's mobile, so we'll be able to take it to communities that are not as lucky as the rest of us that can't get to the drive-through center in Odenturn or something like that. We'll be able to move it around to communities in the center. I think that's going to be a really great thing. The ultimate goal, I believe, is to get to the Naval Academy Stadium effort that we did before that processed 1,000 people a day with the flu drive-through. So that's the ultimate goal, but we obviously don't have the things for that. The governor is now saying his goal is 10,000 tests a week. That's a very aggressive schedule. Like you've heard me talk about in Germany, they're doing 500,000 a week. But if you compare that to Germany, it's actually ahead compared to the population. So people are getting it. You know, we're not going to get confidence back until we get that testing or that sense that the person that you're standing in front of has some level of tests been done or some immunity. So that's exciting. And then today we also had a very good meeting with the some of the people on the Small Business Recovery Task Force. We know that the health crisis is huge, but the economic crisis is going to last a lot longer, and we have to be ready to fire this economy as soon as we can. And a lot of the smart people that live in this city have volunteered their time to help us be prepared. We have to have a plan economically on the other side of this. This city is driven by tourism, so much so, and we have to get the tourists back, and we have to have the tourists feel safe when they come back. So just want to thank you for all the hard work you're doing, and Alderwoman Tierney.
Thank you. In that vein, this is really nice. We're going to continue. The Garden Club is going to continue with the May Day baskets on the businesses and the residents, restaurants, etc. They're not going to be judging them, but there'll still be a May Day basket thing. I think that's good news.
That's good. Right. That's great. Anybody else? Alderman Arnett.
I think Duane had his hand up first.
Oh, sorry, Duane, I didn't see up there. Sorry.
No, just quickly. So is there a concrete plan put in place with OEM on how the testing trials will go in specific communities, or when you will make them mobile for other communities, or is it just based on the performance of the Parole Health Center?
So we only just got the go-ahead from the health department for that last night. So we're rolling out that plan as it comes. I'm just happy that we got our foot in the door, but we'll definitely be communicating with all the councillors on where the need is the most. Alderman Arnett.
The economic forecast, I think, is every bit as frightening as the virus situation. I've just gotten a paper from Brookings, state and local budgets and the Great Recession, which looks at what happened to us 10 years ago, essentially, a little bit more. I've also been in contact with MML to see if they can give us some help in thinking about what the out years are going to look like. He's referred me, Bill George at MML has referred me to an economist with the comptroller. And I've also reached out to Sarah Elfreth saying, really, it's the state that has the wherewithal to get really high-powered economic forecasts. But as soon as we can get our masks off and get out and get back to restaurants and all have that nice restaurant drink, we really are going to have to be figuring out how we're going to come back from a devastated economy. And so I'm trying to get those forecasts from wherever we can, and hope they'll be useful.
Thank you. Alderman Gay?
And just quickly, in terms of like economics, I think this is also a time to create spaces for businesses to feel comfortable coming to the city of Annapolis and growing and employing our citizens, whether it be looking in the tech industry or the healthcare industry, whichever will continue to grow. Just expanding our business portfolio and putting ourselves on the map, and that's what I really look forward to and being a part of on the outside of this as we continue to be there.
Thank you. Alderman Arnett.
In response to that, Duane, and I really recommend it, Rhonda and I go pretty regularly, the monthly business meeting that Steve Rice and Hope Stewart put on are very good. And we have a person, Brian Sears, that comes to those, and he is a tech incubator. And that whole group are trying to do exactly what you are talking about. And they meet the third Friday. We used to meet the third Friday of the month at 8:30 in the morning in the Gorman conference room. I think we're going to have to get those going, because we really need to start now figuring out what we can do to help businesses get back into business. And we do have some people in the city and some people on our staff that are already working on that and are qualified to work on that.
Thank you. Alderman Pendle Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I echo what Alderman Arnett said. Dewan, if you would like for me to send you Ryan Sears' contact information, I certainly can do that. I didn't hear you.
I'm sorry. Yeah, would you please?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, everyone. Alderman Finlayson.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the liaison to the task force, I think you will be pleased to hear some of the ideas that were shared today with the committee members. And they are thinking along the same lines that Ross, you've mentioned, and Dewan has questioned. So stay tuned. Stay tuned.
Are those meetings
Okay.
public? The task force meeting?
Sorry?
Are
Yes.
Are they Zoom or Facebook or?
There will be when we're still formulating it now, but I'm pretty sure there'll be some broadcasting of it. Yeah. And you know what they're talking about is how we phase in the economy. We know that, you know, when we start, you're not going to be able to have all the tables in a restaurant, or there'll only be 5 people will be allowed to go in a shop, depending on the square footage. How we make that plan and then project those revenues for these businesses so they can survive. Right now, it's how can we get them resources to just keep people on their payroll and all that sort of stuff. But then on the other side is that how do we create some excitement about the future? You know, people are feeling pretty hopeless right now, but if they knew all the great things that we've all put on the map for the city, then that's going to help with people's hope, you know, and get people excited about this city and all that stuff. All right, so thank you so much, everyone. Alderman Paone.
I move that we adjourn, Mr. Mayor.
All those in favor say aye. Meeting adjourned.
Aye. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thank you.
Aye.